Exception, Blacklisted Podcast.
All right, welcome to Blacklisted Podcast. We got Pat and me, and we're going to drop some knowledge today on a few things we've been working on. And basically, the total podcast today is going to be about strength ceilings and kind of why and what we need to do to fix it or raise it. And it's really going to be kind of an off-the-cuff conversation. A few things we want to talk about, but there's going to be a lot that you can learn from for a lot of you guys that really, honestly, I think every person on this planet needs strength, and everybody can refine their movement patterns to be better. But there are some big gaps in a lot of things that people do and don't realize that they're doing, or maybe coaches don't even notice it and just like, oh, more weight, stronger, right? Like you don't need to be like that. So there's a lot of good stuff we can hit on. And I think what we're going to start out is kind of like, how do you know, like if you're looking at yourself for like as a strength, not even a strength athlete, just someone that wants to get stronger, how do you know if your mechanics need to be fixed? Just take yourself.
I'm thinking two ways that I can think of immediately is A, when you're filming yourself, you should be filming yourself doing strength stuff. If things don't look right, like it should be pretty obvious whether like it's like a technical thing that you're not doing, or like we talked about a little bit sort of yesterday was like knee valgus, things like that. Like there should be some pretty obvious things. But then if they're not so obvious, it might look like a discrepancy in your numbers. So like if your pressing is, if your 1 rep max back squat's like 500 pounds, but your max strict press is 185, like you need to do pressing and figure that out.
So would you say like the first way to like look at yourself is either, would you rather look at like how you move first or your overall numbers?
Probably how you move first, because you need to build good movement patterns. Because like a beginner, their numbers are going to be inconsistent and weird. So like obviously you get them moving well, and then you work on their numbers.
What about, would you say still the same thing? Let's say, like, so forget beginner. Let's say you have an athlete that's been doing strength and whatever for 10 years.
Yeah.
How would you approach looking at them and seeing if they need, like...
Well, so it depends on how bad it is, I would say. Because, like, if they are already ingrained in a certain movement pattern, like, let's say a snatch, I'll use myself as an example, early arm bend, right? Not optimal, but it's also like, is it worth going back and rebuilding? And will it actually make me better, or is it just going to make my lifts look better, if that makes sense?
Well, I would honestly, like with that example, though, I would argue an early arm bend isn't necessarily wrong if it's done properly, because again, like, yes, perfect world, perfect situation. We want locked out arms like ropes, no slack. The thing is, what's the diminishing returns on if your arms are locked out and you can't ever get the bar to meet at your hips?
Right. And the other thing is, like, everyone's weird. Everyone expresses power differently. But I'm like a huge early arm bend.
I don't think they express power differently. I think they don't know how to express it properly.
Right. Yeah. That's basically what I'm saying.
You're just saying in a nice way of like, oh, everyone can still have power. No, like there's a way to optimize your power.
Yeah.
Right. And that's an early arm bend is. Unfortunately, is like, look, you're not built with arms that only go to your pockets.
Well, and that's what I was explaining to somebody earlier, is like I still snatch only like 1 or 2 inches off the ends of the collars. So I'm like almost at the end, but the angle on my wrist, because the farther out you go, the more your wrist has to turn in, and you become weaker and weaker the wider you go.
Right.
So like me with no arm bend, I'm snatching at the collars, and my wrists are going to be, because I've messed around with it in the past, and I'm like, this feels literally terrible.
Yep.
Why does anyone do it? And it's because they don't.
I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, there are random people that do and somehow move crazy weight, but like,
well, if you're like 6'5", like
Yeah,
Lasha's
right,
like 6'6".
right. I actually go more narrow than I'm supposed to, based
Yeah.
on my wingspan, but that's because of my overhead position. I
Yeah.
need to be stronger
Yeah.
there.
But for example, like, is it worth it for something like that?
So, well, again, I would say like with that, no, only because it's not necessarily wrong.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
again, yeah, here's the catch-22 of like an early arm bend. If you are pulling as you go and bending more and more as you go,
Right.
now we're talking about massive bicep injury potential.
Yeah.
If you're able to stay like a rope with that bend and it's there from the beginning, you're more than likely going to be okay.
Yeah.
Right. So you're short. Now, here's the other side to this for a lot of people like, oh, well, I early arm bend. I'm fine then. Hold on. Are you bracing? Are you using your posterior chain?
Yeah.
Are like right now when I first look and see someone early arm bend, I first go, why?
Yeah.
What is the why? Because the majority of people that do that either have poor bracing or they have a poor posterior chain, so they make up with it for their biceps and quads.
Yeah, and a lot of people who do that too, because of the quad and like the lack of glute engagement, their hips will be really high off the
Correct.
off the pull,
and then have
pull.
strong and weak legs. So
Yeah. So in that case, I had my client Chris had that, and he was early arm bending, and I got him out of it completely, and he doesn't do it anymore. And he shouldn't because he's short. He's got short arms.
Right.
But it was because his legs were weak, and I put him on a solid squat and like RDL cycle. It just fixed everything. Arm bend went away. All the other stuff went away. I didn't even have to like give him an excessive amount of like drills. I just had to make him stronger.
So again,
positionally,
right. So so to go back to that question is looking at your mechanics the most important thing up front? I would say so.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Understanding why your mechanics are a certain way. Everyone's mechanics naturally will deviate a percent.
Right. Yeah.
A singular percent, not 10%. Just because, so here's the other part is like, just because your arms are longer or your femurs are longer or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear, well, they're longer, so my bar will never reach my hips. Bullshit.
You can find a way.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
You're an excuse. Stop making an excuse. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. Let's optimize the way your body's meant to move and get as close as possible to our positioning. Because if it is off, your bar path is going to be slightly off. But the further your bar path is off that optimal moving bar path, the less weight you are going to move.
Yeah. Bar you have to make hip contact for the snatch.
You have to. There's
non-negotiable.
It's non-negotiable.
If you're not doing that, you're crazy.
If you're talking Olympic weightlifting, it's also a non-negotiable to be the best. However, as a athlete that isn't in weightlifting, your sport doesn't revolve around how much weight can I actually move.
Yeah.
So football player, you want to move more weight, but for them, they're looking for power output. So again, the expression of power output.
That's all that matters.
Right? So they do need it to keep it close to the bar. It needs to brush their thighs, but they don't have to worry about early arm bend, bar into your hips, because actually that's not the important part. It's that hip power and a hip action.
Right.
That's what you're looking for. It's not about how efficient do you move a barbell. So that's kind of like why I was kind of asking about that is like, what's the point of your sport? What are you doing? What's the most important part of why are you moving the way you're moving? And how do you get optimal to what you're doing? Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people thought like they don't know how to navigate that. Right. So like I said, if you're a football player, you don't really want an early arm bend. You don't, because you're taking away from your power expression of of your hips. Right. Until you get the bar to your hips. But that's not what football is. That's not how you move, or basketball or soccer or whatever. Right. You need to learn how to move properly. For weightlifting, like in CrossFit or just regular weightlifting, the bar's got to meet your hips. You are going to lose out on how much weight you can move.
Yeah.
So looking at how you fix that. And the reason I kind of brought that up is like for you specifically, because a lot of this is kind of, I want to use this as like an example of what we did with you Let's talk about like where you like before I coached you, where you were at and like the things that you felt like you were lacking.
I probably would have said squat speed, sticking points in my squats, like right around parallel, and then overall like ceiling from all of my squatting.
Right.
Because that was like squatting in workouts, like CrossFit were bad. 1RM squats were bad. Like that was like my major limiter.
Mm-hmm.
Pulling has always been a strength, but the squat has always been
upper
the biggest.
body pulling, not understanding how to use your lower body with pulling.
Right. But I would have said that would be like the biggest weakness for sure. I mean, my 1 rep maxes were the same as people whose 1 rep max squat was, 50 to 80 pounds heavier than mine.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Agree. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, so like watching you lift, you had like originally, you also were like, this is just the way I move. Right. And like,
for a long time, I was like, this is just how I am. Like,
right.
It's a part of my being.
It's a part of your anatomy. That's just your physiology, right? That's how you move. The thing is, I'm like, no, fuck that.
No, yeah.
I mean, but unfortunately, like, I don't know. It's been about 6 months, right?
Has it?
Yeah.
That was fast.
So it was actually
fast.
super fast. It's actually super fast. Because we didn't start really doing what we wanted to do until I think like March.
Oh yeah, because there was like
March or April, something like that. Because you were doing hybrid stuff first, and then I was like, "Let me fix you, and I'll put you where you want to be."
Yeah, and then I mean, even the past 6 months up to now, we've had things stopping us from doing what I really want to do, which is what we're starting to do now.
Right.
Which is honestly perfect timing, starting today.
Right.
But like grid was in the way, beach brawl was in the way, 205 throwdown, like all these things were in the way.
Right.
So
well, because you're still doing CrossFit stuff, but like ultimately, I told you like, look, your mechanics are what are holding your strength ceiling back, and it's going to take some time to rebuild that. Normally, I would tell someone like, especially as long as you've been lifting, like it probably would take much longer, but I get to see you more often and we get to talk about stuff. Yeah. And you're an intelligent athlete, so you're like trying to understand like, okay, this is why we're doing what we're doing, and you can adjust on the fly, right?
Yeah, but I will also say like, as far as like strength training, I feel like, and this is something I'm trying to get across to my dissident club athletes, is pushing the intensity of your strength training, because a lot of people don't understand how to do that or like what it should feel like.
Right.
And I think that's attributed to my success so far, is because I'm adjusting on the fly because I know how things should feel.
Right.
And the accessory stuff I'm given, I push very hard.
Right, because you can. It's not a bunch of dynamic movement.
Right. Like I'm always like, even if it's something not stupid, but like if you something small like the upright rows, like I'm every single set, it's like 3 sets. I'm gonna make those sets super hard, not crazy to where it's the point I'm like,
well, it has to be the movement. Like you're not trying to break away from your movement pattern,
not sacrificing the movement pattern,
but as hard as you can. Right. That's what this is.
And then every week I'm like, this is why I love strength training and Olympic weightlifting, is because like every week I'm like, man, last week did 125. I can do 135 this week and try and
you have to
just always trying to push the numbers.
Strength training is the easiest program to be able to understand what variables are going into this and how do you choose to push yourself every single week.
Yeah.
However, the problem with it is that people think as hard as you can every day. You get strength training, you get 2 days. You get 2 days as hard as you can go. That's it. No more. Yeah. If you do more than that, people are like, I'm on a 3-day squat cycle. I understand. But if you're trying to improve your total strength of squatting, it's too much.
But Yeah.
It's not too much if you're like you have movement efficiency issues or you need to build volume and like there's a different there's a reason.
But the intensity won't be as high.
No, you get one
Yeah.
day. You get 1 day of intensity.
Yeah.
It's like a hard, medium, and light day of 3 days a week, right?
Yeah, I mean, for the Dissident program right now, we have one hard squatting day.
Mm-hmm.
Front squat days, basically all speed based. So it's the band, they're doing the band
Right.
stuff. I'm putting through the banded thing I just did.
Okay.
That got me that 405 front squat.
What was that? Almost a 40 pound,
almost a
squat
40 pound
PR?
PR. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
doesn't happen.
Unless you.
No, it doesn't happen
Yeah.
to people that have been lifting for years. 40 pounds in a
Yeah.
cycle. That's not.
And there's room.
There's room, and that's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
That happens to people that haven't followed a program or relatively new to stuff.
Yeah.
That are intelligent athletes, not just like someone that walks in the gym either.
Yeah. And then what's it? Totally lost. Oh, this is what I was thinking before. I don't know if this has anything to do with what we were just talking about because I just had a complete mental wipe. But the biggest thing that attributed, I think, to the squat gains was you telling me to widen my squat stance and squat 2 parallel. Like,
yeah, well, so that's kind of the
slightly
next
above
thing we're gonna get into.
Yeah. Because it was like, it was so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt so wrong, but I was like, oh, this is what, like, the first time I did it, I was like, this is what I'm missing.
Yeah. So, all right. So, so people understand, and we'll talk about this is, so the way I approached you, right? We talked about this, and then we'll flow into that. Is that okay? Pat needs to get stronger. Why has he consistently struggled at squatting strength, and why is he not able to get stronger? He just plateaued. He's been doing this for a while. Why? I can tell you why right off the bat. Mechanics,
mm-hmm.
core engagement, 2 biggest things.
Yeah.
You should and obviously when we do CrossFit stuff, you've struggled with like GHD toe to bar combinations of like core compression work.
Yeah, even like bar facing burpees.
Yeah.
That little compression.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And 99.9% of people, their squats will go up along with their Olympic lifting if your core gets stronger. Your core gets stronger, all lifts get stronger. I don't care. That's how this works.
Yeah.
Okay? That's the base model. Obviously, we can do all this other stuff, but if your core's not strong enough to support the weight you have to move, you're not going to move it right.
I mean, it's the main cylinder of your body. Don't take that. Don't clip that. Don't clip that shit. But yeah, it's the main cylinder. It's the cylinder that makes up your body.
In CrossFit, the main thing is like core to extremity. All exercise science and physiology. Core to extremity. Core's weak, you're weak. I don't care.
Yeah.
You're going to blow your back out. So, we have to fix that.
And in the front, I will say the front squat, usually I've always been a fishing rod type person.
Not anymore.
No. I did attempt 200 kilos for the front squat, and I was perfectly stacked the whole time, even on as I was driving up. I just
35-pound jump.
Kilo math
ignorant
is not good. It wasn't on purpose.
But basically those 2 things for you. So you squatted, you bottomed out, you had knee valgus, right? Which is not bad at all, but it's just disengagement, core disengagement, because you tried to bounce. And I
think in my case, it was bad.
Yeah. For you, it wasn't bad. I always use this example. Tia is the best in the world, so I'm not trying to tear her down, but hers is really bad where her knees cave.
They almost touch.
And scares me. Women, I'm not trying to make an excuse to give them a reason to say that it's okay, but yes, women have more angled hip bones than we do typically. They give birth to human beings. It changes more after that happens, but it's not an excuse of hey, let's solve this problem. Let's fix it. There's just a massive weakness, and it's pretty typical, and let's solve the problem. Dudes do it too, but I actually just as often, but you just notice it more with a lot of females because it goes a little further. They normally have more mobility.
Yeah.
Right. So basically for Pat, he's squatting and I'm watching him and he's, like, I'm like, all right, well, the fact that he can't keep tension below parallel is a problem. And like, yeah, we want to squat to full range of depth. We need full range of motion to get the strongest we possibly can be. Stop falling into this squat at as for like specifically like athletic performance. Stop squatting just above parallel all the fucking time. Stop. You're overloading your joints too much. And yeah, you're fine now. When you're older, all these NFL players are blowing out their ACLs and Achilles because they're overloading their joints too much. Stop it. Accessory, cool, got it. Full range of motion movement patterns.
It needs to be built in.
Like, there are reasons to do it, but nowhere near as much as is going on. Anyway, tangent. For you specifically, we had to train you to stop trying to use so to backtrack real quick, your muscles have a Golgi tendon reflex. If you don't know what that means, basically in your muscles, there's a natural
reflex. Stretch reflex.
Yeah, it's a stretch reflex, right?
Yeah.
A rebound reflex. It is used and it is important. And I'm not telling you not to train it. You need to train it. That's what plyometrics you need it for.
Right. And I am very much a stretch reflex athlete and always have been. That's why my vertical jump in my long jump is crazy.
Right.
I can jump higher than almost fucking anybody.
Right.
But I was trying to use that to squat.
But you were using it, trying to use it the wrong way. You were using it with complete disengagement of your muscles from your core to
fucking quads,
everything, just disengaged.
Everything.
Yeet, right? And you can't do that. So you've lost zero range of motion over your squat. As you have a very good depth range of squat, right?
None.
But we spent up front, took away the intensity, working on squatting to just right at parallel, learning, or if not at first, like learning what parallel was and then learning how to squat just below that, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just completely lose it. So there's a little progression, like right at parallel or maybe slightly above parallel, then below parallel, but no bottoming out. Like a lot of my notes all the time was do not bottom out. I don't care what weight this is. You cannot bottom out. And then we obviously like pause squats. Everyone stop just doing pause squats to do pause squats. That's not how you necessarily get stronger if you don't have that issue. Just saying. But you had to.
For the pause squats.
Yeah.
So it's funny because the years before I had moved to Georgia, I was doing a lot of pause back squats, pause front squats, like 3-second pauses in the bottom.
But at the bottom.
Right. And it got me fucking
nowhere.
It got me nowhere. Now if I did it, it would work.
It would work now.
But I was like, oh, this is how I fix this. And just fucking sit on my heels at the bottom. Literally, honestly, probably exacerbating the problem when I needed to just rebuild the
mechanics.
Mechanics of the squat.
You had to learn. Strength is about tension and through weak points of leverage. You must get strong in those weak points of leverage. Right. So if you're not strong there, then your core is going to disengage and you're going to find a way. Your body finds a way, right? And finding a way is not the right way typically in squatting.
Yeah.
Or even cleaning. Like you shorten your range of motion, you create bad habits. You find these odd ways to do things, and now you create really bad habits.
Well, it's kind of like people who, when they strict press,
they look at the incline bench press too.
Yeah, and their head snaps up to the ceiling.
Yeah. It's a perfect example. All right, so like you want to get a stronger like shoulders, right? It's tough. They're smaller muscle groups, right? People will be like, well, if I lean back and press it and push my stomach forward, I'm gonna move more weight. You're right. You are gonna move more weight, but that doesn't mean you're stronger.
No, you're not gonna get stronger and you're not gonna improve what you're trying to improve.
No, so like understand what you're trying to improve.
And a perfect example is with people with handstand push-ups, and you'll be like, "Oh, So I've heard this, like increasing your strict press doesn't help your handstand push-ups." I disagree. I think if you strict press correctly, it helps your handstand push-ups.
Absolutely.
And I was a victim of the incline strict press and incline bench press strict press for a long time. And my strict press would go up and it wouldn't transfer over. But now, that's the other thing I PR'd. I PR'd my strict press.
Well, we spent a lot of time of positional pressing overhead.
Yeah. And we fixed it.
Yep.
And then I strict pressed 225, and then I muscle snatched 225. And it's because I actually started doing it correctly and
Right.
stopped worrying about the weight, I guess,
Yeah,
necessarily.
and it's such a hard thing to be like, this asshole is gonna make me like redo all this stuff, and like I don't know about this, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, like, okay, it took you 6 months of development. You've already hit massive PRs, right? People need to give that more time, depending on how much time you train. Like this might be a year or 2 years of development of work. But the thing is, if you're serious about trying to be your best self and understand what you're raising your ceiling, then you need to spend the time on doing that. And I mean, if you're young, like it's great. Even if you're older, like if you want to get better, like
you can still change.
Why would I go?
Mechanics
Okay, I know this is it. That's where I'm trying to get to. When I could be up here,
Right. Yeah.
but I have to take 2 steps back and rebuild and go up again. Like, fix it. I've had to do that when I started CrossFit for my overhead positioning. Like, I snatched a lot when I walked in the door, but we didn't from football. And then I like had to go and rebuild some stuff. And my overhead, my handstand walking. Like, I couldn't hold a handstand. Granted, that's because his arm couldn't lock out from the torn labrum. But like, same idea. Stop pressing, and be like, I'm gonna get this better. You're gonna be stuck until you fix how your body mechanics are. It's just, you gotta fix it. So so I mean, going for you, like we spent all that time on like pause, and then we went to banded. Once we had your body understood, this is where I have to learn to create tension right below parallel,
and doing them banded the correct way.
Anybody, I'm not gonna lie, pet peeve, if you're doing banded squats and your tension is only at the top, what are you doing? There's one reason to do it at the top, and that's for extension. I don't know anybody that struggles with squatting out the last 10%. Nobody.
Yeah.
No one. So
it's specifically when people go down to their bottom position and they lose all their band tension.
The only reason the tension up top makes sense is because you're working on your dips for jerks.
Yeah.
Or seal. If you're struggling to understand how to move down with correct mechanics to initiate your squat, but we don't need to spend time with band to overload that.
No.
Like, there's 0.001% of people that I'll ever meet that I need to do that.
If someone needed that, you could do like a high pin squat.
Right, exactly. Right. So, I mean, I have some athletes that do use bands up top, but that's because I'm working on their jerk position. I'm working on their jerk dip because they need help with that.
Yeah.
For explosive power, right? So again, same thing. Bands. What did I really want to see out of that? Core bracing tension, right? How strong can you be? And then how fast can you move from that stopping point?
Yeah.
Right? Like, bands are great for learning how to accelerate and create fast twitch muscle fiber.
Yeah.
And if you're not moving fast, there's no point.
Yeah. And then the very tricky thing we did, the sneaky thing we did, was we did bands for like 2 months, maybe more.
Not every day in the week, though.
No, just one day a week.
Yeah.
But which is all you need for that.
Correct.
But because there should, like, if you're going to like what Westside Barbell, it's like one speed day.
Right. There's a speed day,
which is bands.
Needed.
Yeah. Anyway. But yeah, so like the 2 months of banded stuff, and then we did 1 day or 2 weeks of chains.
We did. Yeah.
And then went to the 1 rep max.
It was for overload.
Right. Because chains are for strength. But I had never thought about that. Was something new for me, because I was like, because the second I saw chains in there, I was like, I see what we're doing. Like, that's what's also fun about being also a coach and someone who likes programming, is everything we're doing, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, like I see.
It's just another way to do it, right?
Right.
Yeah, and like, so one thing that, like, I'll give an example of bench press. I always loved in strength, like one of my strength programs that I used to run through was my last week or 2 weeks. On my lighter days, I would do, like, specifically for bench press, I would do negatives on bench press. But you need a spotter for negatives.
I would say, like, yeah, just like full on overload.
Yeah. But you're not working on, you are pressing, but like you're getting assistance help up, right? So CNS is getting primed more, but you're not necessarily building muscle. You're building like the understanding of negative, like being on a negative, right? You're more time under tension for the control of it. But it's priming your central nervous system based on my thought process is like we built someone for 7-8 weeks and they're stronger than their old max, but sometimes either the mental side of it or just that your nervous system doesn't know what to do with when you're stronger and how to move a certain weight.
Right.
And now, hey, guess what? We're going to pass that a good bit, get yourself comfortable. So when we go to test, you already know what it felt like.
Yeah.
Right. And chains are in a similar idea because I'm not there. Also, we're not doing negative back squats.
No.
Right. Or negative front squats. We're not doing that. But it's a good way to train that same kind of idea. But also now we're also overloading weight on just a certain specific piece of the squat.
And the chain front squats are the perfect way to do it because it was when unracking it was overwhelming.
Yep.
It was like because I think I had 300 pounds on there and 85 pounds of chains, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And when I unracked it, it was just like, holy shit. It felt like 500 pounds.
Yep.
And then you just get her done. But when I unracked 405 on Friday, it didn't feel heavy.
Like,
I was like, I can jerk this. But yeah, it was just shoot. And those are my first front squats I've done without bands or chains in forever. And I actually audibly said, holy shit, when I did, I think it was 360. I don't remember what it was in kilos, but I front squatted it just shoop. It was like a speed rep. And I was like, oh, holy shit. And that's when I jumped to 405 because I was like, I'm not wasting my time with anything else because that was insane. But it was because of all that overload stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just one way to progress you. I would progress someone else differently.
Yeah.
I would do something not necessarily entirely different, but different. I mean, I have other athletes I give them similar stuff that I've given you, but it's not the same.
It has to change depending on the person.
And this is all just on squatting. Like we had to work on, because your issue of pulling on barbells, your struggle was again squatting. Well, you don't know how to drive out with your legs off the floor. We had to fix that.
We fixed my starting position on the clean and the snatch also, which made a huge difference. And then I PR'd my power clean by 15 pounds.
Something like that.
And it was easy. It was a high power clean.
Yeah.
It was like 340.
And then you PR'd your squat clean.
375. And then PR'd my snatch by 8 pounds.
Yeah.
Which is a lot.
Yep.
For a snatch.
Our strength cycle, we pulled and all this stuff, but we focused on the strength of your squat to get better, to increase your Olympic lifting.
And we did a lot and we are doing a lot of pulling.
Now we are now.
Now we're doing a lot of pulling.
But we couldn't up front because if you did, then you're not learning how to use your legs properly.
Because of the starting position.
The starting position, right?
Yeah. And now I've been thinking this too, is I feel like now that hitting all these PRs was a result of getting stronger, but really this is all a result of fixing all the mechanics.
Yeah.
And then now I feel like the floodgates are opened, and the next year is going to be stupid.
Now we don't have to sit back and go, hey, we got to fix how you're moving first. Now we can focus on where's our intensity and what do we want to attack, and that's it. And now we're off and running. Yeah. It's the same thing as if I'm building a young kid, right? I can't force them into high intensity things if they don't know how to move well. We're just going to create bad habits. And now we're only getting strong in certain areas, kind of like a strict press. You're getting your chest too strong instead of your shoulders like you want, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what your next cycle of testing will look like to PRs, because your body can also only manage so much in a year. It's just, I mean, unless you're fucking absolutely sending on the sauce.
Yeah, you have to be taking a lot of shit.
Right. So your body can adjust, because your tendons and your joints have to adjust, and they take longer than anything else.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's a big thing. What else do we want to hit on this?
I mean, I guess how I've been implementing it into
Dissident,
the programs,
which is kind of what I have like last on the sheet is kind of like what are you using out of all this stuff that we've worked on to use to help all these other general athletes, because you don't get to see them one-on-one, right? You're just
Right.
writing a general program, but you're writing it for a specific
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, and the other part about that is like I started a Instagram group chat with everybody who's doing the program, and I do explain what we're doing and why for every at the beginning of every cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And I give people feedback and a little bit of coaching, and I'll tell some people to do things a little differently on the side, so that I am giving them some kind of direction on things, because it is general, and I want them to freaking do well.
Right.
But as like I took a lot of what we did in the very beginning and created a 12-week cycle that we will repeat probably once a year, which is like the building cycle. It's the starting at 12s down to 8s and so on, with those little bridges in between, and some deloads in there, and that's pretty much exactly what you gave me, and that is the best squatting and pressing cycle I've ever done, because I've done a lot of them from other like specifically like weightlifting programs where it's like the Bulgarian thing, the Smolov thing, the blah blah, and it's all too much, and all these people who
it's simplified.
Yeah, and all the people who do them, it never sticks. Like this, like people who do Smolov, they'll do it and they're like, "Oh yeah," and my squat went way up, and then now their squat's back to where they started. And it's because it's not sustainable, and you're not creating lasting change.
They're not building. They're either not building enough muscle. You don't lose muscle fast, but you can build density, right?
Right.
And you can move more weight consistently. But the moment you stop touching those heavy weights all the time, you lose it.
Yeah.
But if you build the right muscle and you build the right fast twitch muscle fibers, which take a long time to build, it doesn't go anywhere. And I don't lift. I just don't. I mean, I don't unless it's in a workout. I can move absolute mammoth of a thing.
Yeah, you can horse cock some weight around.
But like that's just because. So the program I gave you is just it's Griffin's version of another program. I'm not telling nobody, right?
Yeah, it starts with hypertrophy.
It's
It's
right.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's actually some secret sauce, even though it kind of is. But
And
programs that start with hypertrophy, strength, power, hypertrophy, strength, power. Then we adjust.
Yes, and that's exactly kind of what I was about to say too. Is like that's how all these programs. This is how all the cycles flow, except for one, which is going to be the next one, which is going to be the shortest of all of them, which is going to have a lot of 10x1 things, which is something that I've done in the past personally to get my certain lifts stronger.
Right.
And I've also used it on people. But yeah, it goes hypertrophy. What'd you say?
Strength.
Yeah, hypertrophy, strength,
power.
Yes, that's what I'm doing. But they just all change a little bit. So I'm using that. I use that for everybody on the program. They just finished it. They're on week 4 now of block 2, which is doing essentially the same thing but shorter, and with their new percentages. So it's a lot of 8s. I didn't do 12s. And now they're going to shift into 5s, 3s, and 1s for their different lifts, because I have everything. All the rep ranges right now, like each category of movement is how I have been programming this, has its own progression. So like, for example, their lifts, like the low hang floating snatch, the halting snatch, and the cleans are on 3s. And then the back squats, Romanian deadlifts, and another pull I can't remember are on 8s. and then, or sorry, 5s. And then the other thing is on the 5s right now also. So those are all going to trickle down relatively quickly because they're only going to do 3 weeks of like 8s, 5s, and then they're going to go to 5s, 3s, and then they're going to go to 3s, 1s. And then there'll be a big deload, and that'll take us into the next cycle, which is going to be a lot of Olympic weightlifting, like heavy singles of the lifts, and not a whole lot more, like more maintenance on the squatting, strict pressing, and all that other stuff. So that's how this is all kind of flowing. I think of it as like a ramp, because that 12-week cycle is like the big wedge of that ramp.
Yep.
And then right now we're in that like middle section where we're still doing a little bit of building, touching on the things that we touched on, 14, 15 weeks ago, because you need another touch, and then slowly building it down to the point where we can get really intense with the stuff at the very end of the ramp. And then we're going to freaking start it over, because every single person PR'd. My mind was blown. My mind was blown because I was like, oh man, I was so stressed out that week. That was the test max week of the end of the 12-week cycle, because I was like, did I do this right? You know what I mean? Because it was a new thing that I never programmed before. The new style of programming, I guess, and or a new like way of going about it, whatever. And then the group chat, just like one after the other, every single day, every single person PR'd. And I started texting people individually, and I was like, "Did you PR this?" And they're like, "Yep." And I was like, "Okay." And I go to the other person, "Did you PR this?" And they, "Yep." So it worked really well. So I'm excited to see how my wedge works out.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's progressive overload. You have micro cycles within a macro cycle of things that you want to take them to. And if the hard part is like in a general program, like everyone has their own life and things that are going on, food and whatever.
People are going to miss sessions.
Yeah, right. So you can't control. There's a lot of stuff you can't control. But like if you're consistently having PRs, like the program is working, right? And then you have to reset and move on to a new one, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
No.
And people always feel like, why am I doing something again? Why is it consistent? It worked. Stick with what you know works, review it. What didn't work? What can we do to make it better? And then progress off of that.
Yeah.
CrossFit programming is all this crazy stuff, and it's constantly varied and all these things, and it gets in people's heads of more volume, more intensity, more. No.
Yeah.
Go back.
Keep it fucking simple.
Keep
it fucking simple. There's so many programs that I've looked at that are so complicated, or have you doing like all this crazy stuff off the bat, and it's like, why are we doing
to be cool, to be different, you don't have to stop,
right? Or just giving more to give more. And I found myself doing this when I initially wrote it, because I was like, oh, people are going to see this and be like, oh, what am I paying for? And then I stopped myself and I was like, no, this is truly all that's needed.
Yeah. Like, unfortunately,
and that's what my goal is with this.
The flashy stuff sells, and we're not like, but the thing is, the flashy stuff isn't what works.
Right. I'm just trying to literally give people what they need, and not, it's not Smolov. It's not Bulgarian. Also, a lot of these people are doing other stuff. And that's the problem with a lot of
other stuff.
Right. Well, I meant like other. Like,
I know.
People
I know
CrossFit.
what you meant. I knew what you meant, but other stuff.
Right. And like I just saw that like Catalyst and Cal Strength and all they just released like 5-day a week blog program. I call it a blog program, but it's like a live program, like what we're doing with Dissident.
Right.
And I think it's funny. It's just because like a lot of those programs are so hard to relate to. And what I mean by that relate to is like what you're saying, like people have lives or they're doing other fitness. And it's hard to stick with programs like that unless it's written by somebody who does other fitness or has that in mind. And I actually want to touch on this. This is completely freaking random, but I ranted about it on my YouTube channel a little bit.
What's the at on that?
Dissident
The OG Goblin.
OG Goblin YouTube. Dissident Barbell YouTube channel. So subscribe. But basically is that I have a theory because we talked about general organism strength
At some point
a while ago.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, for example, like increasing your bench press will help your
Clean. Because it does.
And your front squat. And all it kind of branches off to all these other things. And getting generally stronger at one thing makes you generally stronger across the board.
Correct.
Okay. So I also think that getting touches or doses of high intensity fitness also helps you be a better weightlifter.
Do you know why? It's not a theory.
Why?
I guess.
What?
What does high intensity do for your body?
Well, you get
muscle wise.
Help me out. I know it's like hormonally, it's amazing.
So think about it. How to be powerful?
Yeah,
you need fast twitch muscle fiber.
Right.
How do you build fast twitch muscle fiber?
By doing fast twitch shit,
which essentially is high intensity effort.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Okay. I see.
You do need to move fast.
Yeah.
But like high intensity, you don't move slow in high intensity. Like that's not how it works. Granted,
Yeah.
Go back to the question of mechanics and all that stuff. Forget it. Like Like don't worry about that. That is important, but forget it. It works because if you have the right dose and you are training fast, you are building fast twitch muscle, and that transfers back over into weightlifting.
Because I was gonna say, like, an example I used is if you're only doing weightlifting or you're only doing powerlifting, and like once a week you did really hard intervals on like a freaking assault bike.
Perfect example.
You will get stronger.
Because they probably shouldn't go and sprint because they'll probably tear their hamstrings. They don't fucking move.
Right. No. I did that. I didn't tear my hamstring, but I fucked myself up doing sprints that on the field. Definitely high risk.
We also did work on how you sprinted and and bounding out of your balls of your feet. We didn't talk about that.
We did fix that too.
Yeah. That was very important because that's an extremely important piece to the Olympic weightlifting side of things. But,
but the other aspect of it is because and I think of it as like you're increasing your general fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it bleeds over into all your training sessions, because if you are a weightlifter and you see sets of 5, because like I've been part of other weightlifting discussion boards and things like that, or I just see it and people say like, oh, 3s, sets of 3, and I'm just like, what? Like people bitching about having to do
because it's cardio.
Sets of 3.
It's barbell cardio, aka bardio.
Right, and I'm like, we do like 5s, and it's not. I never even think about it, and it's because I'm fitter, and my perception of difficulty is much different. And I think that's a huge issue I've seen with like strength training people, is like they're not doing other fitness to help them train better.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it, like I've seen the people make the argument too of like training for Olympic weightlifting is so hard. Like it's so hard. But like, dude, if you want to train to be like an elite,
it's hard as shit on your body.
Yeah, but I'm saying mentally.
Yeah.
Like it's not. It's so like training to. It's not as painful as training to PR your 2K row. You know what I mean? And it's like if you have that context, it's
a different mentality. You have to you can't check out. Every rep's important, right? Same thing in CrossFit. Every rep's important, but there's so many that people like. You can't. The ratio of how much more important a singular rep is in weightlifting is much greater than a single rep in CrossFit.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to like talk down.
No, for sure
to anybody. I'm more just
different.
Saying like if you do get doses of higher intensity, things that really suck, once a week, it might actually make you enjoy your lifting sessions more, And if you're enjoying your lifting sessions more, you're going to do better.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is on top of that, like, so the assault bike interval stuff, good to do, should do, understand capacities and how many sets, volume, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Just know that is going to wreck you. Your body will adapt, and then you have to increase that as well. But just know your next lifting session won't go well, and that's okay. It's not supposed to.
Yeah,
it's not supposed to. So you're like, oh, I did this and I can't do anything. No,
and
that's you just push your body to its threshold.
And
perfect.
There's also people that I know who they like are doing really hard strength training sessions, but then they're also metconning every day or 4 days a week, maxing out their heart rate, maxing out their intensity, and you're not going to get stronger that way.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. I used to be in this school of thought of like, you could do as much as you want. You can get better at both. And you can get better at both if it's done the right way and you have the right doses of everything. But if you're trying to maximize your strength gains, you cannot do both.
No.
Like you can have that touch of intensity, like I was saying, once a week.
But, it's again focus.
I see people who go so hard on conditioning and then also trying to get strong at the same time. Like they're following like a full-on strength cycle, and I'm like,
you can do strength and conditioning. You can't do strength and CrossFit.
Right. Yes.
Strength and conditioning is simple. We're looking at weightlifting, strength overall, and then we need to look at very controllable things, which are machines and running controllables, right?
Yeah.
Because everything else has resistance. Yes, rowers have resistance, bikes have resistance, so it's even easier just running and lifting. Perfect strength and conditioning.
Right.
Once we start going to everything else, we're adding a lot more variables to things and that are uncontrollable. Like we can't account for them.
Yeah. And I'm talking like when I was saying like conditioning, I'm talking about like things that are hard on your body.
Yeah.
Like if you're doing intervals of thrusters, chest to bar pull-ups, handstand walking, and deadlifts, or some shit, like a bunch of shit like that that's hard on your body and the intensity is crazy high, it's like you're screwing yourself.
Yep.
Yeah. It's lit.
Yeah. Well, hopefully people actually just learned more shit than they thought to expect to learn. But if anyone has questions about this stuff, message Pat for Dissident Barbell stuff or Blacklisted, or just message us directly.
Yeah.
Because if you're like, okay, I've followed programs and I just can't, like, I hear what they're saying, but I can't. It's not getting better. Like he first said is like watching your own videos. If you don't have a coach, you got to video yourself. I know it seems stupid. Like I used to be like, that's stupid. Don't do that. Right. Like you need to watch your videos. You need to watch yourself lift. You need to go in between your sets and review it and be like, oh, what did I not do well? What should I have fixed? Eventually you just know exactly based off of how it feels.
I video pretty much all of my lifts every session just to see at least one set, just to see what I'm doing.
But get a video and you're one of those people and you're like, I don't know, like send us a video.
Yeah.
Send one of us a video and we'll try to help you out. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things like if you have goals, get a coach. Pat knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He knows a lot more now and he's going to continue to keep learning even more and more. And that's what's kind of important about this, about like a coach is someone that wants to learn more. I don't have every answer. He doesn't have every answer. No. But if we don't, we either know people that do, or we're going to learn to make sure that we understand the answer that we need to find.
Yeah, and we're always actively trying to learn more. Like I'm always actively trying to learn more.
Yeah, there's no stagnant. There's no ego of like I know everything in the world. This
is the one way.
Yeah, and there's not one way. Yeah. There are wheels that you should stick to, and then there's little things you add to it.
Yeah, but it's science. You're experimenting.
It's literally science.
Yeah,
there's stuff that's proven.
Got my lab rats, dude, and I'm experimenting on them. But the Dissident Barbell program is literally only $30 a month. You get in the group chat where you get some coaching from me. You get reasons why. You get access to the full program. It's honestly way too cheap. Like you should.
It's true.
even if you don't think you can fully commit to it and you can only do like 3 days a week of it or something like that,
You'll still improve.
it's so worth it. And also like the community aspect that we've been building on there is also huge. But the price point's crazy for what you're getting,
Right.
in my opinion.
Yep. Sign up.
Yeah, do it.
Or message us. We'll help you out with some stuff and hopefully be able to either get you in the right direction, point you right the direction, or maybe you're just like, man, I needed a coach and this is super helpful, because it will be.
Yeah.
It's the best money you'll spend if you have goals. If you don't have goals, it's a different story. If you're just screwing around, like whatever. But
right.
Hopefully you wake up in the morning and have a goal of accomplishing something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what are you doing in life?
Just floating in the dust, just dust in the wind.
Damn, just dust in the wind. And cue dust in the wind. All right, we'll talk to y'all later. If you guys have questions, message us.